This forecast is brought to you by me. For information on readings I offer, check out my website at manic.mercurian.net, or you can reach out to me directly at manic.mercurian@gmail.com, and as usual, all of that information is in the description box below. Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, December 26th, 2022, through Sunday, January 1st, 2023. I did want to take a brief moment to say Happy New Year's to everyone. We've made it through, I think, a very interesting year for most of us here, and we are entering what will be, I think, an even more interesting year, especially astrologically speaking. We do have some events that are happening later this year that I think will be, let's just say, very interesting. And if you want more information on that, I can definitely make a video on it. You know, let's just say that as we venture forward into the 2020s, I think it's just going to get more and more interesting and active and energetic. So yeah, that's all I'll say. But as for this week, we do have a couple things going on. So the first one is everybody's favorite. Mercury's turning retrograde at 24 degrees Capricorn. It's turning retrograde exactly conjunct Venus, which is pretty interesting. So Venus will be at 24 degrees Capricorn as Mercury is also there stationing retrograde. I'll talk more about Mercury stationing retrograde when I get to that day in the day by day forecast, but I did want to mention that on paper it may seem like this is just one day where Mercury switches from direct to retrograde. And although that may be technically true, I did want to describe kind of the process in a little bit more detail. So really, I always compare it to a train. When planets are stationing retrograde, it's kind of like a train moving forward at full speed. It gradually has to, very gradually slow down and come to a stop for just a brief moment, and before it can begin to gain momentum going in reverse. At least that's sort of what happens from our perception, if that makes sense. So that's what's happening with Mercury. And keep in mind, what does Mercury represent? It's the intellect, the logic, the information we come across, and how it's conveyed, how we're thinking, things like that. All of that is almost at a standstill, really, this whole week. So that can make it, I think it makes it dysfunctional because so many of us, many people aren't even aware of astrology. They have no idea this is happening. So they're expecting it to be, just another day, just business as usual. They're expecting it to be productive each day. Our work schedules don't take into account Mercury retrograde. You know what I mean? So we expect just another day of productivity or whatever we do, and we don't realize that Mercury retrograde is not supporting us in this at all. It's more supporting us in slowing down, resting, or integrating, processing things from the past, especially anything having to do with the structure of our lives. So hierarchies, how resources are allocated, things like that. So that's kind of what's going on. I'll talk more about that when we get into the day by day forecast. But other than that, this week we do have a first quarter moon happening at 8 degrees Aries. That's going to really kind of rile us up and provoke us to change things. What's really interesting is that first quarter moon is happening at the same, it's on the same day as Mercury stationing retrograde. So that's going to be a very, very interesting day for sure. On a more general level, I did want to talk about how we are in the beginning stages of winter in the northern hemisphere, and this is very strong astrologically speaking because we have still Pluto, Mercury, Venus, and Sun all in Capricorn. Moon will be transiting from Aquarius to Taurus this week, so it's gaining light, gaining that kind of energy, energizing us kind of gradually here. But on a more general level, we're venturing into winter, and winter is the sort of the last season astrologically, and it's basically a dream time. It's a time for manifesting what's to come later in spring. And I think we can really, start to experience this in Capricorn. Capricorn has to do with planning because Capricorn is one of the darkest times of the year, but it's on the side of the solstice. It's after the solstice, so that means that the sun is gaining power. We are gaining light each day, bit by bit by bit. So that's where Capricorn becomes about, how do we manifest things for the future. especially on a practical level, on a physical level. How do we, work to ensure that the new year, the new cycle, and I'm talking about the astrological new year that really starts in, with the coming of spring in late March. How do we assure that we have the new beginning that we really want? It's not, how do I put this? Like everything does truly kind of begin then in a way, but at the same time, right now is when we're manifesting that new beginning. Right now, we already have this kind of the light returning, this little bit of energy that's showing us that there's this more abundant time of energy that is to come in the somewhat near future. So I don't know if that's like kind of too vague or abstract. To be clear, I hope not, but that's kind of generally the time here. And I think especially when we add in Mercury retrograde to all this Capricorn energy, it's all supporting kind of, let's slow down, let's plan things, let's make sure, we're going in the right direction. Let's kind of double check things, etc. So maybe not the most exciting forecast for me to put out there for this week, but I think it's, these energies are not super fun or silly or exciting or sexy per se, but they are very necessary. They're necessary to make sure that we're processing what has already happened and planning what will happen, if that makes sense, or preparing for it. Setting ourselves on the right kind of trajectory, if that makes sense. Okay, so with all that being said, let's get into the day-by-day forecast here. We start out Monday, December 26th, the day after Christmas here. Um, it seems very dry to me. I talked about this a little bit on, December 25th in the last forecast, where we have a lot of heavy Capricorn energy. Again, Pluto, Mercury, Venus, and Sun all in Capricorn. A lot of those kind of heavy, let's be practical, let's be, earthy, let's focus on what the here and now, and also the future. Let's think about goals and plans, that type of energy. But then we're combining that with Moon and Aquarius, which I can't. I feel like I can't approach Aquarius without talking about these two different sides of it. Aquarius on the one side is Saturnian. Um, so there's this, Saturnian energy. So there's this energy that's saying, let's be disciplined, let's focus, let's be realistic. It's kind of very deadpan, very dry, very stoic, I guess you could say. This is strengthened because Moon will be crossing over Saturn today as well. So let me put it this way. Right now, we have Saturn, Moon, Pluto, Mercury, Venus, and the Sun all in Aquarius or Capricorn. So that means all of those planets are ruled by Saturn. So it's just, this chart is Saturn, 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 Saturn. And Saturn in astrology, in case you're not familiar, is very serious. It's very challenging. It's a malefic energy. So the ancients would say it's a bad planet or an evil planet. In modern times, we don't say planets are evil, we just say they are challenging, if that makes sense. Because Saturnian energy pushes us to become better, and it's not always fun or easy. Well, I'd say it's hardly ever fun or easy to become better. It takes work, it takes discipline. All these types of themes are Saturnian. So that's the start to the week. I think it's kind of a rude awakening almost, starting out the week in this kind of manner. I do think it could be very advantageous for, if you're wanting to be diligent and focus on the future, let's plan things, let's create some kind of trajectory, let's plan some kind of really big project or something. This would be a great energy for that. But if you're like, I'm just trying to imagine if you're just trying to have like a really relaxing kind of fun day, I just don't think the energies are supporting that at all. They're supporting us being, realistic, practical, diligent, hardworking, very logical, very reasonable. That type of thing here. Okay, I wish I could give you a little bit more of a positive spin on that, but that's pretty much it. The positivity would be being very practical and level-headed. I did say for the day prior, and this continues for Monday as well. For Sunday and Monday, I do think now that Moon is in Aquarius, it at least gives us a little bit of a kick. I didn't mention, I didn't finish my thought before. So, on the other side of Aquarius, there is this kind of rambunctious side. I do think this is toned down a little bit since Moon will be crossing over Saturn, but Moon in Aquarius, we are channeling in that Aquarius energy, and on the one hand, it can be very stoic and very disciplined, almost like Capricorn. But on the other hand, Moon in Aquarius can be bringing up these more kind of rambunctious, rebellious qualities as well. I do think that's kind of almost like a mute point at this point though. When we have all these Capricorn energies, we have Mercury, slowing down and stationing. It's really all about slowing down on Monday. Let's be productive. Let's work hard, or work towards some goal, but in a way that's very, very thorough, if that makes sense. On the other hand, there could be delays on Monday as well. Okay, going toward Tuesday, December 27th. So, Moon continues on through, well, it actually enters Pisces right around midnight on the night of Monday, the 26th, going into the 27th. So, in other words, the way I would approach it, at least from Eastern Standard Time, Moon is basically in Aquarius all day Monday, and then Moon is basically in Pisces all day Tuesday. Alright, so I do think this is a major transition for sure. Moon is, kind of awkward in Aquarius, where it was on, Sunday and Monday. Aquarius is just such an sort of emotionless sign, and Moon represents how our emotions are. So it's a bit of a kind of awkward a disconnect there. But when Moon enters Pisces, there's a lot of shared themes. Pisces is a very soft, kind of warm sign. It wants to delve into intuition and spirituality, and Moon represents not only our emotions, but also, intuition and feelings and such as well. It wants to kind of delve into whatever is subtle or nuanced. So there are a lot of shared themes here, and I think there's a warmth that kind of returns with Pisces. So Moon and Pisces, I think this is generally a really great transit, and this will be no exception, especially because on Tuesday we do have Moon sextiling the Sun. So Sun at 5 degrees Capricorn, Moon at 5 degrees Pisces. So this is beautiful. Sextiles are harmonious aspects. They are a little bit weaker than most of the Ptolemaic aspects. So this can be kind of fleeting. It's not a harmony that is guaranteed to be super strong all day, like we would experience with Moon trining the Sun, for instance. But it is kind of a harmony nonetheless. Sun is in Capricorn, Moon is in Pisces. Although these signs at first glance are very different, I do think they kind of blend together in a very kind of interesting and unusual way. On the one hand, I mean Capricorn, where we have a lot of the action going on, it's so kind of dry and deadpan, very practical, and Pisces is so, impractical, imaginative. It wants to kind of, like, in a way, Capricorn's all about reality, and Pisces is all about fantasy. But they do actually blend together surprisingly well. I think because both Capricorn and Pisces have to do with wisdom in different ways, and they also have to do with envisioning the far future, or they're both excellent manifestors. Capricorn in a more practical, like physical side, and Pisces in a more emotional or spiritual side. But both are excellent manifestors, having to do with the yin. They're the yin signs of winter, basically. So on a more general level, Sun, Moon having this waxing sextile to the Sun, it's a harmonious aspect. I think we can all lighten up just a little bit on Tuesday. We just had a lot of heavy Saturnian energies, and for those of you who do celebrate Christmas, it may be a kind of serious time on Sunday and Monday. But once we get into Tuesday, things kind of lighten up. We can kind of relax and, kind of take a deep breath or a sigh or something, and kind of move forward in a more flexible way. This kind of flexibility returns with Moon in Pisces. Okay, and then going forward to Wednesday, December 28th, Venus does sextile Neptune today. So Venus is at 20. Well, it will be at 22 degrees Capricorn in the first half of the day today, and it makes the sextile to Neptune. So So same thing here. We have this sextile between one Capricornian position, planetary position, being Venus, and Neptune, which is in Pisces. Um, this is a really excellent aspect for anything having to do with creativity or anything kind of artsy or having to do with aesthetics, because we're channeling, the Neptunian energy having to do with spirituality and tapping into the collective consciousness and things of that nature, or your guides or God or whatever you believe in. That we can kind of more readily access when we have inner planets aspects Neptune in this manner. And specifically here we have Venus is conducting this aspect, so this is the aesthetics, it's the desire, it's the pleasure. Uh, this may be a really excellent time to have some kind of deep, kind of profound enjoyment of some kind of pleasure, any kind of pleasure really. Could have to do with relationships, or since Venus is in Capricorn, it could especially have to do with something about the long term. Venus in Capricorn always wants long term pleasure, long term enjoyment, or even just knowing that we will have enjoyment in the future. That's the goal with Venus in Capricorn. So yeah, some kind of spiritual sort of pleasure there we can definitely access on Wednesday. That's really the main kind of aspect happening. Other than that, Moon does continue through Pisces. What's interesting is that Moon will cross over Neptune, so we're really channeling a lot of these like Piscean, Neptunian energies here. So definitely a lot of Capricorn, a lot of this let's be practical, let's think about the future, let's work hard. But in doing so, let's also acknowledge the spiritual side to things. You know, I think this is really beautiful because these energies balance one another. Um, if you had the Pisces without the Capricorn, you'd be directionless. You would be emotionally intelligent and spiritual, but you wouldn't know how to manifest that physically. What do we do with this enlightenment or this information? And if you just had the Capricorn energy, you'd be very practical. You'd have every detail covered. Everything would be planned. Everything would be taken account of, but there would be no deeper meaning behind it, if that makes sense. So combining both of these, you can really work hard to create a future that is not only it not only makes sense and everything is accounted for, but there's a deeper meaning there. There's something more important than all the physical kind of stuff, if that makes sense. Okay, and then going forward to Thursday, December 29th. So this is by far the biggest day this week. Let's see, where do I start? Where do I start? Let's actually start with the moon before we get into the really juicy stuff. So moon will leave Pisces and enter Aries in the morning of December 29th Eastern Standard Time. And this, of course, is a major shift as well for actually multiple reasons. I mean, for one, Aries is obviously a very different sign from Pisces. With Moon and Pisces, the last couple of days we could be a little bit slower, more gentle, more sensitive. And as Moon enters Aries, it's almost like flipping a light switch, and suddenly we're focused on things that are much more physical in nature and much more active in nature. There's a lot of energy that's readily available to us when we have Moon in Aries. The other main reason why this is a huge shift in the energy is because the nature of how the Moon relates to the Sun is very different here. So with Moon in Pisces, we had this sextile that was really harmonious, very gentle and such. Now Moon steps into a square, and that leads me to the next kind of big thing that's happening on Thursday. So we do actually have that first quarter Moon. In other words, Moon squaring the Sun. Moon will be at 8 degrees Aries, squaring the Sun at 8 degrees Capricorn. This will be in the latter half of the day, Eastern Standard Time. So not only do we already have Moon in a very fiery, kind of active, restless sign, but the nature of the aspect and the nature of the first quarter Moon is restless and I guess kind of fiery as well. The first quarter moon is the most volatile part of the whole lunar cycle. I would say probably even more so than a full moon. I always say everyone pays attention to the full moon, but they don't look at the quarter moons. And I don't know why, because if you Well, just see for yourself, I guess. See what happens Thursday. I experience things as people, even animals, are tend to be very restless during a quarter moon, especially a first quarter moon. And again, this is a first quarter moon in Aries, so I mean, this is about as rambunctious as you can get it, kind of. This is a time that I kind of have the same spiel, so forgive me if you've already heard this, but this definitely applies to this first quarter moon, maybe even more so than the past ones. Let's do the pros and the cons. So the cons would be this type of energy can make you restless, it can make you stressed or anxious, but it doesn't have to. On the plus side, there's just a lot of energy available right now. Um, and so, what this dynamic is supporting is, let's start something, let's change something, let's do something. So, I always say if you're trying to just rest and have a relaxed day with the first quarter moon like this, it's just not going to happen. You got to do something. You got to change something. This is, I would say it's an excellent time to start something. However, we do have Mercury stationing retrograde at 24 degrees Capricorn today as well. So this is going to be dysfunctional. I won't lie to you for sure. Because on the one hand, we have Mercury stationing retrograde saying, let's kind of slow down, let's stop and pause, let's unwind, let's think about the past. But then we've got a first quarter moon in Aries, which is saying, let's go full speed into the future. So it's kind of like, it's like, I don't know, it's like braking while it's like hitting the gas pedal and the brake at the same time. That's what we're doing on Thursday. So typically, when this happens astrologically, it's very very dysfunctional. So there could be more accidents today. What else? Just kind of a general hectic, dysfunctional type of feeling, if that makes sense. Um, we already typically experience this with Mercury stationing retrograde because of what I said in the intro. Most people don't know about astrology. They expect things to be business as usual. Our work schedules do not account for astrological cycles. I wish they did. I think we could be a lot more productive that way, but they don't. So, so we show up to work expecting business as usual, and Mercury retrograde is not supporting that. It's wanting us to pull in and take a break, take a rest. Let's slow down. Let's think about the past, or let's be more creative. Let's focus on the non-physical. Let's focus on our intuition. Let's be artistic, or let's focus on like writing or things of that nature. Anything having to do with the subconscious is excellent during Mercury retrograde. But again, it's just I think it could be a lot more harmonious and positive if we were all aware of it, but unfortunately we are not. So that's where we experience the dysfunction, everything breaking down, um, and just the quirkiness, the dysfunction. Also, I will say more specifically for this whole Mercury retrograde transit, it is happening in Capricorn, so this is an excellent time for really scrutinizing the structure of everything. Who's in charge? Why are they in charge? Have we thought about this before? Or what else? We could gain access to more information involving the past events related to whoever's in charge in our lives. So, of course, collectively, that could have to do with our politicians or, I don't know, CEOs, who's in charge of the businesses. But on a more personal level, it could have to do with, I don't know, your parents if they're an authority figure, or your boss at work, whoever is an authority in your life. There may be just some dysfunction there, and you may also gain access to information about things that have already happened related to those people or those things. Whatever is the authority figure, whatever is the structure of your life. This could also be a very excellent time for rethinking how you approach, how you allocate your resources, time, energy, money, etc. Or just how whatever your own kind of rules are for yourself in your life, if that makes sense. So all in all, Thursday is it's a wild day. Um, you know, we're combining all this Capricorn energy, Pluto, Venus, Mercury, and Sun again, in Capricorn with Moon in Aries. Aries Capricorn squares are just so I feel like it's like a gridlock. Both are such strong energies, but in such different ways that they just they cannot and will not, come to an agreement. There's no, what's the word, like combining these energies in a smooth way. Both are so independent and stubborn, but in different ways. Capricorn in a more slow, thorough way. Aries in a much more rapid, let's do something, let's get something done in the moment. Screw planning ahead. Let's just act in what we feel in the here and now. And Capricorn says, that's ridiculous. We have to plan for the future. Screw what we feel right now. Let's think about what we're gonna feel 10 years from now. You know what I mean? So there's just no reconciling this this dysfunction, this disconnect between these energies. My only advice would be, what would be my advice? It's weird because typically a first quarter moon in Aries would be an excellent time to start something, but we have Mercury stationing retrograde where it's, usually if you start something as Mercury stationing retrograde, it's either going to take a long time to get off the ground, it's going to be very delayed, or you will start it quickly, but then you'll kind of go back on it and it will kind of collapse. So if you start a new job or a new relationship right now, it probably won't last long. It can, if it really, really feels right and you've really thought about it, go for it. But a lot of these things don't get off the ground really if you start when Mercury's stationing retrograde. So, okay, so my advice would be do something today. You need to be active in some kind of way. But at the same time, you have to also slow down. And I know that's contradictory, but the astrology is contradictory here. The energies are contradictory. That's just, I've learned as an astrologer to just say it how it is sometimes, and it in a weird way it may not make sense as you're hearing this if it's before December 29th, but when you're experiencing this, I bet you it will make sense on some level. You have to simultaneously, or maybe at different times throughout the day, spend some energy going forward, starting something new, taking some kind of action, but at the same time being very thorough in doing so and having time to slow down as well. I don't know if you can do both at the same time or maybe just have a bit of both in your day at different times, but that would be my message for Thursday. Okay, and then for Friday, December 30th, Moon is continuing through Aries. We had that first quarter moon pretty early in Moon's transit through Aries, so we're still experiencing a lot of these tense energies on Friday, even though we don't have that exact square aspect between the Moon and the Sun. In other words, we don't have that exact first quarter moon. Moon is still in Aries, and it's squaring the Sun by sign, and more specifically, it will pass through exact squares to Mercury and Venus, and those are inner planets. So in other words, like we're still very much feeling this first quarter moon into Friday as well. May not be as acute, but it is almost as acute. So a lot of that dysfunction is still going on, and Mercury has just, of course, stationed retrograde the day prior. So, so a lot of dysfunction still. A lot of what I said on Thursday will apply to Friday as well. Very dysfunctional. People may be confused, upset. There may be delays, technology breaking down. Again, I don't think Mercury retrograde has to be so dysfunctional. It can be a time to slow down. But when we're combining this with what was just a first quarter moon in Aries, it's 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 just difficult. It's difficult to blend these themes when they're so different. So that's where the dysfunction comes into play. Um, yeah. Okay, that was short, but I think that's all I have for Friday, really. Going forward to Saturday, December 31st, New Year's Eve here. So Moon does leave Aries and enter Taurus about halfway through the day, right around noon Eastern Standard Time. Of course, this is another shift in energy, and this is going to be really nice, not only because Moon is exalted in Taurus, so this is typically a decent transit in terms of where we stand emotionally. Moon is exalted in Taurus because only in Moon and Taurus can we have this kind of this sort of almost perfect balance of knowing our limits, knowing our boundaries, being very firm in where we stand, but at the same time being open and receptive to others as well. So Taurus, embodies this having a strong identity, but also strong empathy as well, and that's why I think the moon thrives there so much. So generally speaking, with moon transiting through Taurus, it gives us the best shot of being emotionally grounded, stable. Taurus is such a practical sign, and also very sensual. Taurus loves to enjoy, the pleasures of life, the physical pleasures. So Moon and Taurus typically a good time, but this is especially true this month because Moon is stepping into a trine with the Sun now. We already had that really kind of dysfunctional, intense, action-oriented first quarter square when the Moon was in Aries. Now the dynamic completely changes as Moon uh, enters Taurus. Taurus squares Capricorn by sign here, so we won't get Moon trining the Sun this day or this week for that matter. But it's already beginning to step into that dynamic. It's trining the Sun by sign. And whenever the moon is close to a trine with the sun, it's a stable, harmonious type of energy. This will be especially having to do with the physical aspect of life. Sun and moon are both in earth signs. The focus now is very much on earth, so the physical qualities. Earth energy is known for being, hardworking, but also enjoying physical pleasures, so like nature, for example, or food, comfortable clothing, etc. That's kind of the focus, but also, at the same time, also hardworking and very practical. Okay, also for Saturday, actually, really, that's it. We don't have any planetary aspects at all. And I will say there's going to be a general lack of planetary aspects as we get into January because with Mercury slowing down and retrograding, there's less going on. I'm gonna go on a very quick kind of sidetrack here for a moment. So in the Greek plays, the character Mercury, Hermes, he was never the main character typically, but he had the most lines because he was, constantly connecting with all these other characters, all these other deities. And that's very much how the planet Mercury acts. Typically, it's Mercury that's initiating the most planetary aspects, the most conversations with other planets, you could kind of think of them as, because Mercury is the fastest planet. Unless we're talking about the moon, that's kind of different. But just talking about Mercury right now, that's typically what goes on. So a lot of aspects are initiated by Mercury. But in this case, for this time that we're entering now, Mercury is very slow and it's traveling retrograde now. So it's not really initiating a whole lot of connections to any other planets. So I did want to just kind of explain why there's going to be a lack of aspects, generally speaking, as we get into January here. Okay, speaking of getting into January, let's go forward to Sunday, January 1st. So on this day, Moon continues through Taurus. Again, this is really beautiful, and we will get that exact trine between the Moon and the Sun today. So Moon at 11 degrees Taurus, trining the Sun at 11 degrees Capricorn. This is even more beautiful because the Moon will be conjunct the North Node. So there could be kind of some unusual or unexpected sort of karmic events happening today. And when I say karmic events, I mean events that seem to happen out of nowhere, but they kind of put you on the right track. Like you happen to meet someone who has the information you've been looking for, or you know what I mean? Like just kind of it makes me think of movies, like something happening out of a movie, sort of something that wouldn't seem like it would typically be possible or likely, but it just kind of coincidentally falls into your lap today, if that makes sense. So very nice, especially again, Moon. This is like triply beautiful. Moon is exalted, beautiful. Moon trining the Sun, beautiful. Moon conjunct the North Node, beautiful. All of this is very harmonious in a very stable, strong kind of way, and potentially karmic as well. So really, really beautiful, especially considering this kind of hard time we've had in the week before. First we had to deal with all this very stoic kind of disciplining energy, and then the first quarter moon was very confusing, at the same time as Mercury retrograde. Now I think as we get into the weekend, we can relax even more. And by now we will have adjusted at least a little bit to Mercury retrograde. um, I think it takes a few days, and of course, the whole Mercury retrograde transit is often characterized as dysfunctional, and it can definitely can be. But I think the first couple days are the most dysfunctional. So we can kind of adjust to it and get into it. And of course, this whole process will be easier if you know these things. If you know what I'm telling you or what other astrologers will tell you. Mercury retrograde is a time to slow down. Let's enjoy the current moment, or even process the past. Let's integrate things, and especially because these are such earthy energies that we're having. Mercury retrograde in Capricorn, Sun in Capricorn, Venus and Pluto, Moon with Uranus in Taurus. Earth energies want us to be slow and thorough anyway. Even if we didn't have Mercury retrograde there, which is also saying the same thing, Earth signs tend to be that way as well. So for Sunday, January 1st, we do have one planetary aspect. That would be Venus conjunct Pluto. It happens very early in the day, Eastern Standard Time. This to me is pretty interesting. Venus has a lot to do with our money, individually and collectively as well, so our economy. Especially in Capricorn, which has to do with the structure of everything, the hierarchies, the economy, money, things like that. The system, I guess, would be a really great way to put it. So as Venus passes over Pluto, Pluto is a dark energy. I don't want to demonize it, but it is the destroyer. It typically destroys whatever is not good or just in order to make way for something better, stronger, more ethical, etc. But it is still destructive nonetheless. It's still a dark process. And Pluto can also bring about a lot of insecurities or fears as well. So, Venus crossing over Pluto in Capricorn, I think this could bring about a really deep, profound change to our economy, our finances. And when I say deep and profound, I do want to put into context here. This has happened every year since the end of 2008. In other words, Pluto's been in Capricorn for that amount of time, and every year Venus passes over Pluto once per year. So I do think this would indicate profound changes for the structure of our lives, the hierarchies, the economy, but not in such a way that it's not like I wouldn't say it would be like something you've never experienced before. This is almost kind of a yearly type of thing, if that makes sense. But it could definitely challenge us in those sort of Capricornian areas. Okay, so that's what I have for you this week. Yeah, I like to give you the astrology as I can best articulate it or interpret it, and so that's what I do. But I do wish I had some kind of more fun, festive energies for you this year. But it is kind of, or excuse me, for this week. But it is kind of serious, generally speaking, this week. It really has to do with, I think, having to do with improvement, planning. Let's become better. Let's work on things. Let's have some self improvement this week. So, although that's not the most fun kind of thing to do, I do think it can be very necessary and very rewarding. That's what Capricorn's all about. Maybe it's not fun in the moment, but we can enjoy ourselves later, and we can enjoy ourselves in the process in a kind of sort of deep way. Just knowing that we're working toward a better future, if that makes sense. Stay tuned next week. Next week we have Venus moving into Aquarius, so there's definitely a shift there. You can see it even in the chart that I have on the screen. Venus is right on the cusp of Aquarius. We also have a full moon in Cancer next week as well, so that's always interesting, combining Sun in Capricorn with Moon in Cancer, where it is in domicile, where it's very strong. So yes, thank you for watching or listening, and I'll talk to you next week.